welcome to Ofofo Studio. My guest for today is one of the most prolific CISOs on our platform. He's also a person I love to talk to. You must have caught our conversation that happened last month. The link of that episode will be plugged into the description. But to start with, Dr. KK, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Angad. Really pleased to be over here today.
Absolutely, man. Like, great to see you in person.
Thank you. Same here. Same here. The feelings are mutual. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the agenda for today is to go over some of the most common key phrases which people search for related to cybersecurity on the most popular search engines and get the answers from a professional himself. Dr. KK, are you up for it?
100%. Looking forward to it. Bring it on.
All right, Matt. So the first category that we're going to go for is strategic cybersecurity.
Yep.
In which we'll focus on the business aspect of cybersecurity initiatives. So the first question for you is, how does one ensure that cybersecurity strategies directly support an organization's overall business goals?
See, a lot of organizations, when they start their business or they start writing their strategy, it's predominantly focused more on the financial growth.
Right.
It's focused more on the operational growth. It's got risks in there, but more in Australian market, especially, it's more about health and safety risks and operational risks and so on and so forth. One of the key focus areas now that's starting to become for the executive leadership teams is around the cybersecurity risks, because that is something that most organizations are now facing as well, and it's starting to become a risk from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
From the objectives, I think we need to treat it no different to a financial risk or an operational risk, because cybersecurity can impact both.
Absolutely.
For example, if you have a ransomware attack, you will be, or organization will be subject to a financial risk, because whether they decide to pay or not, we don't recommend anyone to pay because it is actually criminal.
Mm-hmm.
But should an organization make a decision to make a payment, that will have an impact on their financials.
Right.
It could also have an impact on their operational risk as well, because their production line could stop.
Right.
So
right.
we need to make sure that when the business objectives are written down,
Mm-hmm.
those objectives are then supported or measured against the risk framework, which will also need to have a cybersecurity risks in there.
Right.
From how the organizations do it, it always starts from the top. Typically, it's actually a CIO or a CISO's role to have that conversation with the ELT or the board.
Who's the ELT?
Executive leadership team.
Uh-huh.
To have that conversation with the executive leadership team or the board to articulate to them what those risks are. Because the board people and the executive people don't really understand what that cybersecurity risk, that what does that mean for the business.
Correct.
Traditionally and typically, cybersecurity is dealt with or deemed to as an IT problem.
Right.
So they would look at the CISO or the CIO going, why are you talking to us?
Right.
Go sort it out. Why aren't you doing it all?
Right.
But this is now a complex problem, because it's not just an IT problem, it is a business problem. So it's the CIO's role to educate the executive leadership team, including the CFO, including the CEO, including the chief marketing officer, to what these risks are in a term or in the language that they can understand.
Yes.
So don't bring in there the technical mumbo jumbo. Don't talk about we've got a TCP IP that needs to be changed or a antivirus that needs to be installed. Talk about what does that mean from a business perspective.
Right.
So that's a very key. It's a very fine balance, and actually is like an art.
Mm-hmm.
Most CISOs come from a technical background, so they're talking technical mumbo jumbo comes in naturally.
Right. Right.
Get used to talking in a language that the executives understand.
Sure.
So they can then go, oh, I understand what this actually means. Oh, we need to make an investment. They can then frame it against the risk of that particular aspect, see whether it fits in within the risk appetite for the business, and then make informed decisions.
Makes
so
sense.
when it comes to business objectives, it's the CISO's role or the CIO's role to make sure they bring it onto the table, have a really robust discussion, be very blatantly honest.
Right.
Don't sugarcoat it.
Mm-hmm.
Go straight up, be very upfront, be very succinct, be very clear of what you're asking the board and the executive leadership team to do.
Right.
And then link it back to the business objective for that particular business.
Right. So you just spoke about effective risk assessment when it comes to business and bringing in frameworks that can justify that to get a higher ROI for your funding from the board. How does risk assessment scale when it comes to sizes of the companies or the industries that they're in?
Look, every organization gauges or manages risks very, very differently. So
Yes.
there is no one size that fits all. To some organizations, for example, if I look at a health organization, for example, and I look at the cybersecurity triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability.
Right.
Confidentiality ranks the top,
Right.
because for a health organization, they've got people's private data, they've got health information, age information, all that sort of stuff. So confidentiality associated with that data is at the primary thing. If I now flip it and I go, let's look at a water entity or a power entity, right? Their primary aspect is to make sure we have continuous water supply. Their primary objective is to make sure we have continuous electricity supply.
Yeah.
So if I look the same framework, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability, for a power organization or a critical infrastructure, availability is at the top.
Right.
Because it's not about if they lose customer data, yes, that hurts. But if they lose the power that they can provide the power to or water to the customers,
Yeah.
that is catastrophic.
Yeah.
So in that case, availability comes in at top. So from the framework perspective, there are multiple risk frameworks that
Right.
one can adapt to. They need to tailor make it to what business they're in, number one. Number two, they also need to be very clear on how much risk appetite do they have, because you can't cover 100% risk in every area.
Yeah.
You have to have some sort of a lever or an appetite to go, this much risk we will accept.
Yeah.
What is your risk appetite for cyber risk? That may include, for example, if availability, there's zero tolerance to this, then there is zero tolerance to having a cyber attack on your SCADA systems or availability, your operational systems.
Right.
You've got zero tolerance to that.
Yeah.
That's a CIO's role, a CISO's role, to translate that. And the question they can ask is, would you accept if the power went down for 2 days?
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you most of the people at the board level or at the executive level of the CEO will go, no, have zero tolerance to that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, because does that mean that what that translates to, you have zero tolerance to a cyber attack in that focus area?
Very interesting. Never really thought about it like that.
Because that's what brings the point home. That's what is real to them. They do not understand that a cybersecurity incident would happen. What does that actually mean till the time it actually happens to them?
Right.
By making it so personal and so relatable, that's when they go, yeah, sure, I totally now get it. That by having a cyber attack in the organization in a availability type system, if I have zero tolerance to that, that means I have a zero tolerance to a cyber attack.
Yeah.
Ask the same question to a health organization. Going, what tolerance do you have for losing your data or patient data?
Yeah.
I can guarantee you there will be zero.
Bring up the point where it hits them hard.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And then once you've got that, once they are tender, then you can say that means that you have a zero tolerance to this. They can't go back then.
Yeah.
Because they've just said yes.
Makes a lot of sense, man. Another thing that's associated when it comes to risks is companies this size would be working with numerous other vendors.
Yes.
Right. So this is more about managing your internal risk. But when it comes to interacting with the supply chain or managing vendors who could be cavalier with your data or anything that could bring risk to you, how do you go about managing that equation?
Third-party supplier risks are now one of the top risks in cybersecurity.
Right.
We have started moving to a cloud-based systems about 10 odd years ago. We've started moving to a SaaS solutions about 10 odd years ago. As part of that, when we give our data away or when we are using their services, we have an expectation that they are putting the cybersecurity controls that will protect our data.
Right.
Similar to what our customers would expect of us, that when we take their data, we protect it.
Yeah.
Same way. What I have seen in the last 10 years that I've been focusing significantly on cybersecurity arena is when we are engaging a third-party supplier, we don't ask those questions because we just assume that we can give our data away and it becomes their problem.
Yeah.
The challenge is, it is their problem, but we can't abdicate that responsibility. From a third-party supplier risk perspective, there are frameworks that they're readily available. But I would say if you're looking at engaging a third party, bring in a cybersecurity person, even if you need them for a day, half a day. Bring them in if you don't have that person in-house to talk to the vendors and ask them the right questions. And those questions could be, I'll give you what those questions are. The questions are, how do you protect my data? What kind of controls do you have in place? What kind of frameworks do you align with? If you're hosting my data, do you comply with SOC 1, SOC 2?
Yeah.
If you're actually, do you do your third-party assessments on your suppliers?
Right.
So it's not just a first line, it's a second line as well. Do you do that? Do you ask them the right questions? If there was an incident within your organization where my data is breached, where are your responsibilities?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? What are the timely times that you're going to get in touch with me?
Yeah.
What are the things that you have already planned for? What are the things you've already practiced?
Right.
So is your incident response plan something that's just a document that sits in someone's cupboard? Or is that something that's been tested a number of times as well? So there are multiple things, multiple questions that you need to ask them. That could include Microsoft, that could include Google, that could include Salesforce, that could include Atlassian, whosoever your vendors are. You need to ask all of them the same set of questions. They will give you a response back. Their responses will be different. All of their responses will be different because they all handle security differently.
Yeah.
You need someone to then translate that into your risk, your objectives. Does it fit in over there? And then that's when you make the decision whether you want to engage with that supplier or not.
Perfect. You brought up a very interesting thing right now. You spoke about developing an incident response plan, or whether you have it or not. Now it's easier for larger companies to set something like that, right? But when it comes to smaller companies who are just focused on their own business objectives, it is an afterthought in most cases.
100%.
Right? So my question is, how does a small company get the basics of an incident response team right?
You're 100% right. Small businesses or startup businesses, or even I would say some scale businesses, they don't look at incident response plan as something that they actually do need now.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's one of those things you need it when you least expect it.
Like
and
a first aid box.
Correct. And then when the moment comes when you need it, and if you don't have it, it's too late to create one.
Oh yeah.
So from the perspective of the sizing of that incident response plan, my advice is everyone needs it. What scale, what depth is something that you can decide based on what your risk appetite is. I'll give you what that actually means, to break it down even further. If you're a small business or a scale business and you're predominantly using cloud-hosted applications, you're either in Microsoft or you're in Google and using Google Suite or using Microsoft 365. You've got all the other applications like your HR application, you've got your finance application, you've got your ticketing solutions or the way you manage projects like Jira or something like that. All that is cloud-hosted.
Yeah.
In your incident response plan, it will be predominantly a lot more of the supplier risk and the supplier incident response plans.
Correct.
That will be one of those things because you've basically outsourced that or using that as a service. In your incident response plan, it will be probably very skinny. Who are the key people that you will need to reach out to should that incident occur? You will also have components of how do those applications integrate with each other, and if there is a cyber incident, for example, in one of the HR applications, does it impact my payroll application because they are linked?
Yeah.
So does the information flow through? Does that stop that? If that does happen, how do I continue to pay my employees? So is there a manual process that I need to switch to? It's the same way as when we drive a car in cruise control, or when a pilot goes and puts the flight into cruise control mode and there is an incident and they need to take that manual operations, they need to have a very clear plan of what you need to do as manual operations.
Absolutely.
The challenge is today, we are so used to having technology around us that most of the people won't even know how to go work without a technology.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So paper-based processes, that could be part of your incident response plan. Try and turn your technology off for a day.
Yeah.
Assume it's not an incident, cybersecurity incident. Simulate that. Go, there is no Office 365. Can you still continue to do your work?
That's a very interesting exercise.
That is your incident response plan. Test out your BCP, business continuity plan. Incident response plan will directly link into your business continuity plan. Turn it off for one day. Assume it does not exist. You're testing your incident response plan. Because if an incident occurs in a live environment, that is what will happen. You will lose all technology.
Yeah.
Can you operate without that? Can you still continue to operate your business and keep serving your customers on a paper format, on a telephone, on whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Try do that
Right.
because that's you're testing the incident response there.
Absolutely. So if your guns are taken away, can you fight with your
Can
hands?
you 100%? You may not survive,
Yeah.
but you know what?
Yeah. You
Be
should
very
learn how to
clear-
box.
Be very clear that I can only survive for an
Yeah.
hour,
Right. Right.
and that would be it. What would you do in that hour?
Right.
Don't what are the things? As assume this is the last hour for you're in the business for that particular day. What are the things that you're going to do? Are
Right.
you going to gracefully reach out to your customers, tell them that, because that is one thing that you'll have to also suffer at the end of it. If your service is stopped to your customers will call you,
Yeah.
and they will not be shy in telling you how they feel.
Those are very uncomfortable calls.
Very and then you've got to balance it out. On one side, you got to deal with the customer calls
Right.
who are irate.
Mhm.
On the other side, you still have this problem that you haven't solved yet,
Yeah.
and that's got time bound on it.
Hmm.
You got to be very clear where your focus going to be, because it's going to be a fight or flight mode for you.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable. I have been in those situations personally
Mhm.
in my past life. It gets hard and it
Mm.
gets very stressful. Be very clear. Give it a good thought of what your processes are going to be, because at that time your brain will freeze. I can guarantee you, if you haven't thought this through.
I can second that, man. Like, there's a situation nobody wants to be in.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, you're talking about processes. Let's move on to people and processes. So that's another thing that is searched a lot, which is how do you foster a culture of security awareness within an organization?
Great question.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, Angad, I have still seen that people think cybersecurity is an IT problem.
Yeah.
And they would go, it's not my issue. It's the CIOs or it's the IT teams and so on and so forth.
Right.
There is a huge education, I believe,
Mhm.
that the governments are also now doing, is to make sure people are aware that it's everyone's responsibility, like national security.
Yeah.
It's everyone's responsibility.
Mm.
If you see something, you say something.
Mm.
If you do your role to protect the organizational security, and the fact of life is that somewhere we have been trained that way as well, as in, like, we all now have a multi-factor authentication on our banking applications and our Gmails and
Yeah.
here and that. So anything that's personal to us, we take it personally.
Yeah.
You know, when we put security on it. But what I've seen, Angad, is I've seen people walk through the glass doors when they come through the office. Outside of the glass doors, they'll go, "Oh, my responsibility. My security is my responsibility."
Yeah.
They walk through the door and something changes here and they go, "Oh, security, that's IT problem."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Something happens in the glass doors.
Yeah.
What we are, as a CIO and the CISOs of the organization, what we are trying to educate and build that security culture is, no, nothing changes through the glass doors. It's still your responsibility. You are operating with the organization's data. It's still your role to maintain and protect that.
Yeah. It's
And
a
you do
shared
it's a shared
responsibility.
responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just the CIO's role. It's not just the IT team's role. It's not just the security team's role. It's not Google's problem. It's not just Microsoft's problem. It's part of this is your problem too. Because guess what? If the technology goes, can you do your job?
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
So you will be impacted somewhere as well.
Yeah.
In order to build a security culture, number one, there are multiple strategies that are being deployed.
Hmm.
Education is the key.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we speak about this a lot. We make sure people are aware what the consequences are if it doesn't work and what is their role to play in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, we make sure that people are doing, say, cybersecurity training on a yearly basis. If that's what your risk appetite statement says, that an
Yeah.
annual thing is what they do it on an annual basis,
Yeah.
right? And then we make sure there are compliances and checks and balances and process that everyone does it.
Hmm.
Third thing, what we can do is test if that training is working or not. And that's usually done through phishing simulations, or
Right.
where we try and, in a safe environment, we allow people to fail.
Right.
If they're going to fail, let's fail in a safe environment.
Hmm.
We allow them to fail so that we are, we're re-emphasizing on that training if they need that. So we identify what training do they need further, and then we re-emphasize on that.
Hmm.
But fourth thing, and that's very, very important, where people and the managers get really shy. If there is a repeat offender, then there is a conversation to be had, because that's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. If we support people
Mm-hmm.
as part of their learning journey,
Mhm.
But if they are not complying, or if they're not listening, or if they're not validating, and if they still think it's not their problem but someone else's,
Yeah.
then that authentic conversation needs to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and we have that real um, chat
Yeah.
that we go, look, we've seen this happen multiple times.
Yeah.
You're the one with the privileged access.
Yeah.
If you compromise yourself, we give a lot away. We give the farm away.
Yeah.
The business doesn't have an opportunity or tolerance to that, or risk. It doesn't fit in with our risk appetite. So you've got two options.
Right.
Number one, either you be a little bit more conscious and aware,
Mm-hmm.
so you basically toe the line,
Yeah.
or we coach you
Yeah.
in a different way. But that could be coach them out of the business as well,
Yeah.
if that's what's required.
Yeah.
So don't, as a business leader, as a CEO, as a CIO, as a CISO, as whosoever, if you're a person in authority of cybersecurity, then don't be shy in having those conversations, because there are going to be some people who are not going to get on the bus.
Yeah.
Get them off the bus.
Absolutely. Being careless repetitively is not very different from having malicious actions.
100%.
It's the
You're
same.
an insider threat.
You're an
You're an
insider
insider
threat.
threat.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the business should not have any appetite for an insider threat.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a ticking time bomb for the business,
Yeah.
then you shouldn't be in the business.
All right. So how do you go about attracting and retaining the right kind of talent?
Great question. Look, it's a complex problem again.
Mhm.
What they talk about, 6 million jobs at the moment in
Mhm.
cybersecurity. It's absolutely crazy. The businesses aren't able to backfill the roles. They aren't able to find talent. If they're able to find talent, they can't keep them on board.
Mhm.
Be rest assured, someone will poach the talent, because if you've got someone in your business in cybersecurity and they're half decent,
Yeah.
someone else is eyeing on them.
Oh, for sure.
And it won't take long for you to lose that person. So how do you deal with that? How do you sort of deal with that sort of situation? My suggestion to a lot of businesses is, don't take that. Is that your core business? Is that something that you do as your day-to-day business? If it's not, then outsource that bit, because that's where companies like Ethos and other vendors would come in. We pay top dollar to people to make sure that we can retain them.
Yeah.
You may not need to do that. So
Yeah.
if you may only need half a day, a day. So bring someone in for that particular portion of time,
Yeah.
and get them to do that specific body of work. You
Hmm.
don't have to carry that cost. Engage consulting,
Mhm.
engage fractional people, fractional CISOs, fractional security architects, or whosoever it may be, to help you do specific bodies of work. Get them to complete that, and you don't wear that risk. Then
Right.
you have access to those people as you wanted, when you wanted. You don't have to keep them on your books.
It's also a quality thing, right? I mean,
100%.
like
100%.
1 hour of a professional is probably like 100 hours of an amateur. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So look, the challenge is, if you get an amateur, if you get someone that's not in your line of business, how do you manage them? How do you
Yeah.
make sure that they're not pulling wool over your eyes?
Yeah, especially if you don't know yourself.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, for example, in our business, if we needed brain surgeons, I can guarantee you we won't go and hire brain surgeons in our business.
yeah,
We will outsource them. We'll bring specialists in,
absolutely.
and we will get them to do that componentry for us.
Makes sense. So this is more about an organization managing their own cybersecurity strategies and initiatives. But sometimes, like in most cases actually, the government comes in and they ask you to have certain safeguards in place in order to just be able to do business with each other or with them.
Yep.
So what are some industry specific compliance standards that companies need to be aware of?
Good question. Look, every country or every government has a different stand on what the regulatory compliance they need from their
Right.
businesses.
Mm.
In Australia, essentially, it is a big thing. So there's a huge push
Mhm.
from Australian Cybersecurity Centre around, and Australian Signals Directorate around compliance with Essential 8. So they've got it very clearly articulated that all businesses will be level 1 maturity
Mhm.
by 2025. I believe it is. Then the government organizations would go to level 2, and level 3 is more around the defense and so on and so forth. So
Got
more
it.
sensitive stuff will go to level 3, level 2, level 1, depending on the size of the business you are.
Mhm.
If you're actually in a if you're dealing with a lot of patient data and health insurance, health componentry, you have to comply with HIPAA.
Right.
If you're dealing with a lot of European nationals, you have to comply with GDPR. If you're dealing with Indian nationals, you have to comply with the DPDPA. If you're dealing with if you're having a lot of credit card information on your financial information on your systems, you have to comply with PCI DSS. So there are multiple frameworks.
Hmm.
Which one applies to you? Well, it depends on your business.
Right.
It depends on what type of data you hold, where you hold it. Is it onshore? Is it offshore? If it's offshore, where is it hosted? So
Hmm.
on and so forth. Does it comply with the regulations? If it's in the European region, does it comply with GDPR? If you're holding on to European nationals, do you have to comply with GDPR and so on and so forth?
Yes.
So this is, if you open up the can of worms of what this actually means, it we'll be spending days and days and days just talking about one particular framework.
Hmm.
So there's enough information available, or if you need to reach out, we can help you specifically in those industries. One of the key areas that I believe is starting to come up, and we are quite passionate about that, specifically around um, uh, the the small to medium sized businesses. It's a new framework out, which is now starting to become international framework as well. It's called SMB 1001.
Hmm.
Now, that particular framework it's holistic,
Hmm.
and it is at the same time it provides you with the t-shirt sizes. So what that means is, if you can choose depending on the size of the business you are and what your risk appetite is and what your risk profile looks like. You can choose between, say, bronze, silver, and gold, and it can be self-attested by the director.
Wow.
So you don't have to engage. If you choose not to do so, you don't have to engage a cybersecurity consulting firm. But I would highly recommend you do, because once you actually do sign off on those things as a director, whether you're in Australia or whether you're anywhere, you're taking personal responsibility associated with that. Are
Absolutely.
you really clear? Would you, like, for example, if someone asked me to do a brain surgery on someone, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I may not be I may not be successful, but I'm saying it's something I don't want to touch. It's
I
got
won't
life
take
in.
that
I
chance,
won't
man.
take that chance at all. So from that perspective, I will highly encourage you to bring a cybersecurity consultant in, or someone who understands this and is a partner with those organizations who can get you certified.
Yeah.
The bronze section will be like 9 controls.
Mhm.
If you go to silver, it probably will be around 15 or so, and if you go to gold, it will be like 22 controls.
Hmm.
And that's holistic. It spans across your networking layer, it spans across your application layer, spans across your user training,
Mhm.
privilege access management, all that sort of stuff. So it's quite holistic. If you're an enterprise, you want to go further down the path, like to a next, definitely there are 5 levels you can choose from. Up to gold, a director can self-attest, or
Hmm.
they can sign off on that, and you would get certified at the gold level certification, or a bronze level, or a silver level, whichever you choose from. I think that sort of a model is reasonably easy to adapt to,
Right.
because say if you pick up a model such, or a framework such as ISO 27001, which is reasonably well established, the challenge is it's so vast.
Yeah.
To get it ready, it's a significant investment. To get certified, it's again a significant investment. But to maintain, it's even a significant. So it's a long term
Yeah.
investment. Whereas for SMB, it's like you're talking a few hundreds of
Right.
dollars. It's not expensive at all. It's very, very holistic,
Hmm.
and it covers all the risk areas depending on your risk appetite. I would say go get started with that. At least you'll make the journey. You don't have to go ISO 27001. Don't do it if you're a small business. It's not fit for purpose. You don't
Yeah.
want a Lamborghini if you only need a very small e-scooter, for example.
Yeah.
Don't go holy grail. But just from the perspective of getting started,
Mhm.
SMB 1001 is a reasonably good standard. We are strong advocates of that.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. I'm going to talk about some of the emerging threats and trends. So, one of the most common searches is AI powered cyber attacks.
Yep.
So, AI is being used by both defenders and attackers, right? As a defender, how do you go about using AI safely?
Good question. Look, AI is now getting built in a lot of product suite anyway.
Yeah.
So if you look at any of the SIEM capabilities, or what do I mean by that? Let me take a step back. when we go into any business, what we do is we deploy agents on their devices. So, what that agent does, it's basically eyes and ears. It listens to all the traffic and all that sort of stuff, and it doesn't store anything. It then passes that information on to the mothership. Mothership then takes all the information from those agents saying, what are you listening, what are you seeing, and so on and so forth. And it tries to correlate those and go, okay, I can see a login from a user in Australia, but at the same time, I'm seeing the login from the same user in Greece, and I'm seeing login from the same user in Japan, for example. You can use technology such as VPN to do that, but in saying that if they are physically moving around, it's not a VPN address, then that's physically not possible, which is abnormal in a way. So what that does, that mothership correlates all this information, because that's what the agent's telling them. Well, we see a login over here, we see a login over there. The AI componentry is now actually getting built in those motherships.
Okay.
Right? We call them in cybersecurity terms, we call them those correlation tools, we call them security incident and event management, i.e. SIEM, IEC. So as I go along and I talk about SIEM, that's what it actually means. Think of it as a mothership, the mothership that hears from all the agents. Right? So the technology, there are multiple providers of these SIEM these days. There's Splunk, there's IBM, there's Logarithm, there's multiple of them, and the new ones are coming up. AI is now getting inbuilt as part of that. So what that AI does, it is basically, rather than manually looking at correlation, it basically looks at the patterns of it. It gets the information from external sources, threat hunting, and so on and so forth, and it actually tries to give you the most closer response, a lot faster, a lot more efficient as well. So whilst the AI is getting used at the defense side reasonably well, because if we understand those threats and those patterns reasonably well and a lot faster, we can respond to it a lot faster. From a defense perspective, that's really handy. Where AI is a dual sword or two-sided sword, it's available to the cyber criminals too.
Oh, for sure.
So what they are doing is they are using it to get a lot faster and a lot more creative and a lot more efficient, and a lot more newer aspects are coming through in that. They're using AI to create the new types of cyber attacks. And so we're basically using from the if I can put the red and blue team, we're using the same toolkit, which is AI, to create the cyber attacks and defend the cyber attacks.
Right.
And we don't communicate with each other. So cyber criminals won't talk to the defense side and go, hey, just letting you know, we created something and we're shooting this out. We're shooting at these rockets on the other side, so make sure you're ready to defend them. No. So it's up to you. It's up to you, whichever side you are in, to create those your responses associated with that. So AI is being used from that perspective very, very very effective. Well, it's now being used quite heavily. What I would suggest to, I'll probably shift the gear a little bit and sort of talk about AI is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful technology. We encourage and support all businesses to use that. There's a huge push in the business industry to start using AI, whether it comes to their sales, marketing, their social media drafts, and so on and so forth, even report writing and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
From privacy perspective, just be very conscious of what you're feeding the beast.
Right.
Because from the responsible use of AI perspective, don't give out your trade secrets. Don't give out the actual conversation of the minute. So if you're doing that, make sure it's your secured version. So don't put that in ChatGPT free version, because that is being seen by all, that is being used by all.
Right.
So if you put in a trade secret over there, you will actually be giving your farm away. So don't do that. It's a responsible use of AI. If you're actually going to be using that for any of your client information, so make sure you desensitize it.
Right.
Don't put that in there in the free version, because you're giving that client's related information onto that AI as well, which is learning from you. So our advice to our clients is always, and that's something that I'm quite passionate about, is use the AI where it needs to. Definitely not saying don't use that. You've got this really sophisticated very well written, very well driven machine.
Hmm.
Learn how to use this machine first before you
Mhm.
start getting behind the driving wheel,
For sure.
because otherwise you will be creating a lot more crashes
Yeah.
than you would be creating good, for starters.
Hmm.
Make sure you are desensitizing all the information. Take from the beast. Don't feed the beast where you don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the message I want to give around.
Makes a lot of sense, man. So you brought up another interesting point right here. That you said that hackers and defenders obviously do not talk to each other, but hackers and hackers talk to each other.
Yep.
But on the flip side, like it's the people who are safeguarding companies' interests, they don't communicate within each other.
I know. It's a very
Right.
it's unfortunate
Uh-huh.
that those who are doing good are not talking to each other very well.
Right.
Because the red team, or if I can call them that, the offensive team, or I wouldn't even call them that, the cyber criminals. Let's call them that.
Yeah.
The cyber criminals communicate with each other a lot.
A lot. Yeah.
And they will, if one's got a success in one area,
Oh,
they will share it.
Yeah.
And go, hey, here's my toolkit. Use that.
Yeah.
And they take that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Going, hey, I developed this. Use this, everyone.
Yeah.
But we don't do that on the blue side.
Mhm.
I'm a strong advocate of that's something that we probably do need to do.
Okay.
Maybe we need to probably open up a conduit where the defense side can talk.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge becomes there probably does need to be governance on them, because we don't want a cyber criminal moles,
Yeah.
or we don't want Trojans to come in there
Mm-hmm.
and listen into that secure conversation as well, because that that's going to be really hard if you're doing all this good talk and a mole comes in and takes that away and passes that information on. So
Yeah.
how do we maintain that? It's again a complex problem.
Mm-hmm.
Who starts off this is a complex problem, but that's something that definitely needs to be done somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the next search term is around ransomware.
Mhm.
So what are some of the most common tactics, techniques, and procedures that are used by threat actors who
Yep.
use ransomware?
Yep. Look, from a ransomware perspective, what we have seen,
Mhm.
most of the cyber criminals use the social engineering, the phishing technique to come in, because
Pretty
it's too much
standard
of a hard work, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, to break the. If any organization's got any level of defense in depth set up, their firewalls, their external perimeters where they're stopping it, it's too much of hard work for them to break that.
For sure.
Because most organizations, even if they do a 50, 60, 70% job, they do a reasonably good task.
Right.
Now we've moved all of things to software as a service. So the Microsofts of the world, the Salesforce of the world, the Googles of the world, they actually they spend a lot of money
Yeah.
in their security.
Mhm.
So they have a really top notch. I'm not saying it doesn't get compromised. It
Mhm.
can. So it's not a never, but it will take someone really a lot of cash, and they need to be really, really motivated to do that.
Right.
To break into that. So ransomware criminals usually are still using the old techniques, or the other techniques, such as phishing and social engineering to come in. Because what that does is it gives them if someone's fallen a victim to phishing or a social engineering attack, they've given the farm away.
Yeah.
And that's once they've got the username and password, and they don't have an MFA set up, or the MFA is being bypassed by some other way, then the ransomware criminals have got access to the tenancy. They come straight in, and they actually have access to your corporate data.
Hmm.
One of the things that we've noticed, which is quite different to what it used to be before. So ransomware criminals will come in and basically do a ransomware deployment straight away.
Yeah.
What we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years is they don't do that anymore. They come in, they sit there, and they live off the land.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is they will actually be posing, and all the traffic will actually be seeming normal to any of your end detection and response systems. So it's using the same protocols, it's using the same language, and so on and so forth. So it's actually seems that they're dormant,
Hmm.
but they are actually communicating back to the mothership, their mothership,
Yeah.
the beacon, right?
Yeah.
They are communicating back over there.
Hmm.
So that's basically called the live of the land
Mhm.
type attack. And that's becoming really, 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 really common these days. And they go undetected.
Mhm.
Your endpoint detection response doesn't detect, depending on which one you have. But there are a large number of them that just goes undetected over there. It's really important for organizations to be aware and do sometimes bring in different vendors to do audits on their environment
Mhm.
because you get fresh pair of eyes to do
Yeah.
that. What
Yeah.
I've also seen a lot of organizations do, if you're doing a ransomware audit or a security audit, they get the same player in, and you don't get a different perspective
Yeah.
because they do the same thing over and over again.
Mhm.
I highly encourage you to refresh your vendor cycle around this. Do a ransomware audit on your environment,
Mhm.
but get a different player to do it. They will have a fresher pair of eyes. They'll have new set of tools that they probably may use.
Mhm.
They probably may pick up something that your current toolkit isn't picking it up.
Mhm.
So that will be one environment. From the criminals' perspective, they sit there for about 6 months or so. That's what we've seen.
Yeah.
And they will monitor you, they will measure you.
Mhm.
They also are gauging what sort of ransom attack or what sort of ransom payment demand should there be.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because they're going, like, this organization's
Mm.
financial shows that they do a revenue of, let's cook a number, $500,000 a month,
Yeah.
for example. I'm just cooking it up. So that works out to be $6 million. Oh no, half a million,
6 million a
$6 million
year.
a year,
Yeah.
right? That's what the business is worth.
Hmm.
No point asking them for a $60,000 ransom.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's up the ante and go. We will ask
10
for
million.
10 million or whatever it is. They know what their turnover is, so they
Yeah.
can then work out what ask they should be, because they probably will put in some negotiation factor in there as
For
well.
sure. Yeah.
So they would go for that particular figure.
Mm.
That's one. That's what they're using this time for. They're not sitting there because they're bored. They're actually learning a lot about your business.
Yeah.
Secondly, they also time it. So if there's a busy period
Mm-hmm.
that you have in your business, they'll probably attack then because you're more likely to pay.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
they would not go in your down period because you would go, we've got about a month to sort of, we can still probably live by that. Or
Mhm.
if you're in the peak period,
Mhm.
you have an urgency. There's a high likelihood you'll pay. They'll attack you then.
Yeah.
So they measure up your paying capacity.
Mhm.
They measure up the worst time
Mm-hmm.
for you. And thirdly, from the perspective of your competition, they also look at what's happening in the competitive market for them to time it when they should attack you.
Very
Because
nice.
if your competition's progressing further and you're sort of keeping up with them, it may be a low period,
Mhm.
but it may be a busy period for you because this is the time you're using to get a step ahead from your competition. They'll probably come in over there.
Mhm.
6 months is more their research time.
Wow. Wow.
So it's a very complex. It's starting to become very sophisticated. And I hate using these words, complex and sophisticated, because everyone in cybersecurity uses them. But I can't find a word that articulates these things as succinctly as these two words do. So I'm gonna use them till the time I find a replacement. The ransomware industry is starting to become very, very sophisticated because it's becoming a business where it's actually run by organizations who are well funded,
Mm-hmm.
who operate like a machine,
Yeah.
who operate like an organization. They have a HR team, they have a KPI team,
Wow.
they have incentives team. So if
Yeah.
you fit in your ransomware targets, you get incentives,
Mhm.
and if you don't, then you also get performance managed.
Wow.
So it's it's starting to become
Yeah.
a well-oiled business.
Yeah.
That's how it is at the moment. With if you look at, without mentioning any names, there are some big ransomware companies out there, or criminal gangs out there, and if you take the veil off, that's how they operate.
Come on, man, they're like really smart people that you're dealing with over here.
100%,
I mean,
100%.
we'd love to have more people like you, man. It just makes me a little, like it all sounds very dystopian,
It is,
but that's the way it is.
at the moment. That is 100%.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna go over some of the most common key terms that are searched by people who
Mhm.
wish to understand about key concepts around cybersecurity, right?
Yep.
So I'm gonna start with the first one, which is zero trust security. What does that mean?
Zero trust, it's basically, that's what it means, is like you trust nobody. So
Hmm.
what, from, it's easier said than done. What does that mean in technology? What are you talking about, Kiran? In a technology term,
Mm-hmm.
so when devices are connected to internet or they're connected to a network, there's a level of trust established. So a device A can communicate with device B. It's part of the family. They've got the same bloodline, if I can put a human aspect to it. So brothers and sisters can talk to each other.
Yeah.
The challenge today with cybersecurity, what's come through, is that you don't know who's your bloodline anymore. So people can pose to be something else and they are talking to you. And it could be a malicious device
Right.
in your network.
Hmm.
So going to use the human relationships into networking languages or into machine languages. So you've got um, malicious devices who are posing to be your part of your network,
Hmm.
but they're actually not. They're communicating out to the criminal organizations. What zero trust does, it's a philosophy or it's a principle, whatever, whichever school of thought you follow. What it does is it actually says you trust no device.
Right.
So anyone you're connected to, there's zero trust.
Hmm.
Every time they have to prove themselves that they are in your bloodline, they are
Hmm.
trusted device. And that can be done through multiple facets. So you can have certificates in there that would say, hey, prove that you're my bloodline or you're my blood group, and I produce my blood group certificate to you. And you go, yep, that's the same blood group as mine. That's it. We are brothers or sisters and we are talking still. Same concept in the technology terms. They have to prove that their certificate is valid. They're of the same connection. It's they're authentic and they are still working through in the same network and they're not malicious. That's a zero trust. So we establish it that way. Trust no device. They have to prove themselves that they should be trusted.
I love your analogies. I must say this. I mean, it's a rare talent to be able to break it down into a common person's language. I've
Yeah,
never heard or seen somebody explain zero trust that successfully.
thank you. That's a compliment.
The second thing, endpoint security. What's endpoint security?
Endpoint security is your guard that sits on your, say if you live in a building complex, whether it's in Australia or whether it's in India. So if you're in India, you'd have a guard that will be standing at your doorstep, right? Who'll be monitoring, managing, asking where are you going, what floor, what unit number, who are you here to see, and so on and so forth. If you're in Australia, you'll probably have those buzzer systems where you'll have to come in and press a buzzer, whatever your number of unit that you're going into, and you'll have to say, hey, I've got to go to unit number 12 or whatever the case may be. And that monitors and manages that. You put a layer of on top of that, and you go, say for example, in Australia, you would have Chubb Security, or no, I'm not a branding for them or anything like that. I'm not brand advocate, but you could have, organization security companies who are watching over your camera systems and so on and so forth. In India as well, you would have those companies who would be doing that. That's the analogy. In the technical terms, your endpoint detection and response is basically an agent, a guard, a person, a virtual person who's sitting on your computer and is monitoring and managing and seeing all the traffic that's coming through. Anything that is abnormal, it will raise an alarm or an alert. What do I mean by that? Say, for example, if you are a HR person in an organization or a finance person in an organization, you would work with certain folders and certain systems, and that's part of your norm. That's what you do. That's your day life. If you're a finance person, there is no reason you would go into your operating system files and change that.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is there will be never a situation, very unusual, that you will be going to see program files, Windows 32, System 32, Windows System 32, and making a DLL file change.
Right.
You'd not do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your endpoint detection and response system, which is also now powered, most of them are powered by AI, they would monitor your behavior and they would go, that's something that's unusual. And if it is, it'll actually block that process.
Okay.
And because sometimes the ransomware attacks and so on and so forth can happen at an odd hour, can do things that are abnormal, and that's not sitting in your profile. If someone's not watching that, if the time goes by, you've given the farm away. Endpoint detection and response systems, they actually are the gatekeepers, the monitors, and the managers of what's actually currently happening in your endpoint device, which is your laptop, your phone, your desktop computer, whatever it is, or your tablet or whatever. It's the guard that sits there, manages and monitors all the network traffic that comes through, what changes you're making, and decides what's good, what's bad.
Nice. So the next one is disaster recovery.
Yep.
What does that mean?
It means exactly that. A disaster has occurred. What is a disaster?
Yeah.
I'll separate it out a little bit for you, Anga, and your listeners as well. A lot of people are actually not very sure about what a disaster recovery is and what's a business continuity.
Yeah.
And I'll separate them out for you so your listeners can understand that a little bit more. A disaster is where something totally drastic has happened. And think of it this way as There's been a fire in your data center.
Oh
Things
my
have
God.
just burned down.
Yeah.
There's flood in your data center. Your infrastructure is going down. It's flooded.
Hmm.
It's either fried or it's drowned.
Hmm.
Cyber attacks can bring in the same kind of an impact where
Mhm.
your systems are virtually not available. That's a disaster. Typically, a CIO or a CISO in event of a cyber attack are primarily the disaster recovery uh, coordinators. They become the central point of they have to call the shots and they have to provide the updates back to the media, to the executive leadership team, to whosoever the stakeholders are.
Yeah.
They will have teams that will be working on specific aspects. Now, whether that could be resurrecting the infrastructure, resurrecting the application, resurrecting the networks, and so on and so forth. Basically, they're building the ground up house. Your house has been burned down or your house has been flooded. That's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's the same type of concept in the technology world. Disaster recovery planning
Mhm.
basically works towards writing a document or an artifact that helps you plan for that. Now, it sounds really bizarre going, why would you plan for a disaster? But here is the moment of truth. If you haven't planned, you will have no clue when that does actually. Hopefully, you write this plan, you keep it somewhere, you never have to use it.
Yeah.
But if that if that matter does occur, you better have a plan that you can go to, because again, it's your brain will go into a fight or flight mode. You won't
Yeah.
know what to do.
Right.
So
Right.
unless you have that, you will be completely stuck.
Right.
I'll shift the gear and go to business continuity. When a disaster happens, one can go, well, the business comes to a stop. Well, yes, it does. But from the business perspective, that's what the IT does. Like, so technology responsibility will be to resurrect the system so business becomes technology enabled again.
Right.
But from business perspective, they have a responsibility to make sure their customers are still served. The business is still serving the customers. That's business continuity. That could mean go back to a non-technology oriented platform or paper, phone calls, whatever it is. You have to pay the people, go to the bank and deposit cash into their account. Whatever the case is, there needs to be business continuity associated with that.
Right.
So a lot of businesses don't have a clarity around what that means. Like, what's a disaster? What's a business continuity? That's the easiest way I can break it down. Technology aspects of disaster will be dealt with by the CIO and the CISO or someone in the technology leadership team. The business continuity is not a technology matter. It's something that the business does. Right. And there needs to be a plan associated with both of them. Because once again, when that does occur, if you don't have a plan, it's too late to ride one. And if you don't have a plan, it's too late to know even where to start.
Well said. So the last term that we want to focus on is security on cloud versus on-prem. How are they different?
They're different. Well, security is security. From my perspective, security is security. It needs to be top-notch on it, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's on-prem. If you go to the cloud, you can leverage off the security that the big players are already putting in.
Yes.
So you look at the Microsofts of the world and the Googles of the world and Salesforce and all those companies. They spend a lot of money on security, and they would be putting top-notch security controls and measures in place. And if you're going to them, you can leverage off that.
Right.
If you're having it on premise, then you may not be able to get that whole state of the art one, but you still will need to put your security in. There are advantages and disadvantages in both. Let's talk about advantages. One of the key ones is you can get it as a service. Your subscription includes that. Over here, you don't have that. So that's a plus minus. Plus and not so big plus kind of a thing. The other aspect of that is over here you don't have a choice. You get given what you want, or what you need, basically. Not what you want, what you need. And the big players will decide what you get. Because they will put that as part of the whole platform, and you would just get that as a gift from God as part of your subscription fee. Over here, you have a lot more control. So you can then go on-premise stuff. I can put whatever layer of security I want on it and whatever my risk appetite is. I don't need to do a gold-plated version.
Yep.
I can go with a silver-plated or a bronze-plated or whatever the case may be. In security, I would say more is better, but again, it's your business decision. Some of the key differences associated with that is around the flexibility of what you put in and the state of the art security that big players will put in compared to what you would put in. These are some of the key ones. But once again, your responsibility,
Mhm.
your your accountability associated with security does not change. So if you've made a decision as a business to go down to the path of on-premise security, then
Mhm.
make sure you don't short sell yourself. Make sure you put in the level of security that needs to be over there, so you're not shortchanging your customers, you're not shortchanging your stakeholders, you're not shortchanging your employees.
Beautiful. All right. That brings us to the end of this, Dr. KK. Now, let's shift gears and talk about cyber ethos. What brings you to India and what's the way forward?
Great question. Look, something very exciting has recently happened. So we were listed as one of the top 5 businesses in cybersecurity from Australia on a global award stage,
Wow.
and that happened in Dubai. So we recently went to Dubai to do that, and I can very gladly say that we are bringing the golden lady home. So we have actually been the winner of a Cybersecurity Business of the Year award for 2024
Mhm.
on a global platform for the Fortuna Global Excellence Awards. That happened on the 6th of December, so not long ago. And we went up on the stage and picked up the golden lady, and we're taking it home for the team.
I'm
So
not surprised at all, I must say.
no, I'll be honest with you. It was a very surreal moment for us.
Mhm.
I started this business in 2022 off a vision that I had, and I still have that vision. Is to, you know, if I can use the word Uberize, my vision is to Uberize cybersecurity for every business on the planet. And what I mean by that is to make sure that cybersecurity services are made simple, easier, frictionless for the end customer,
Right.
and they can get it whenever they want it, wherever they want it. We paused on 6th of December to reflect where we've come from, and celebrate our success. Um, but our vision is still there. So we've got on to work again. We celebrated on the 6th, but we got back to work again on the 7th. Until the time our vision isn't into fruition, into reality, cyber ethos isn't stopping. So that's the vision that we have, and we are all working towards it. Where to from here? Look, 2025 has got many big things that are planned for us. We are starting to look into bringing in a consolidated cybersecurity service to our customers. And what I mean by that is working with the Ofofo team to look at what consolidation can happen through the platform, and then grow that realm into Australia market as well. As part of one of the lead fractional CISOs for on the Ofofo platform, I want to take that charge and drive that further within the Australia and the whole APAC region. We're also driving a lot of work with the SMB market as well, and driving that towards the small to medium sized business, tailor making it for their specific requirements, and making sure their security posture is appropriately set up for what their business risk appetite is as well. The third thing we are doing is also to drive that security culture. We are rolling out the fit for purpose security trainings for those organizations as well, and embedding that with the security phishing simulations and so on and so forth as well, just to make sure that whatever we're talking about in audit, risk, governance, compliance, so on and so forth, we're bringing that to the security of the people as well, to the people, for the people.
A lot of people have got to be incredibly grateful for this, Dr. KK.
Oh, we do it for our passion.
Yeah.
I am so driven by it. From cyber perspective, that's something that I wake up every day with a mission in mind. If I can say this, I'm definitely a man on the mission.
Oh, yeah. And that enthusiasm and passion is definitely infectious. It's an honor to have you on the platform, Dr. KK. I must say that.
Thank you, Angad. It's been a great pleasure to be over here, talk to your listeners, and we look forward to, if there's more opportunities where I can come on your platform and I can educate your users. I'm more than happy to do that, because that gives me the reason to wake up the next day.
Thank you so much. That means so much. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.